Whole team. Crack. I cracked three.
We go down.
Go. Crack another. Pico. Serious crack. Down. I shit on them. 45. Cracked. One shot. One. Dead. Cracked. Down. Idiot.
Cracked, Octane cracked.
One down. 99 on me. One shot. Down one.
I'm coming, Chris. I'm coming late. Think another one. So I know where to go. Think him.
Literally dead. Literally one shot. I don't think it's a secret at all that controller aim assist is completely overpowered. I mean, let's just go ahead and look at this. I'm literally moving my controller right to left, and you can see it literally sticks onto the bot whenever he slides over. Of course, this is only possible with the best settings on controller. So let's talk about it and go over the best settings. All right, now that we're in my actual settings, you're gonna see that it's very, very basic. So my look sensitivity is 4, my ADS speed is 3, and I play on classic response curve with a small look dead zone. Now you're gonna see a lot of people are gonna have very different settings, and I'll explain a little bit on ALC settings in a second. But a lot of people like to play with response curve linear because linear is raw inputs. Now the problem that I have with linear is that I just have a little bit too much stick drift when it comes to linear, like that. A lot of players play with dead zone. It's very small, close to none, and they all pretty much have stick drift. It's just they do a way better job at controlling it, and they just like the feel of it. I don't. So rule of thumb, if you're experiencing any type of stick drift with your controller, it's either your controller's busted or it's just your dead zone in game. Like your look dead zone, you can change this to large. I don't recommend because it just feels very, very clunky. Small works the best for me. And if you're having stick drift on linear, try out classic because that's what I use and it works perfectly fine. Now let's talk a little bit about ALC settings. Now, just for example, I took ecstasy settings and I kind of put it on here. I'm not sure if this is exactly what he plays with, but the last time I checked, he played with pretty much this speed. Let me just show you what it looks like to a player who's never actually touched this, because I'd never played with ALC settings before, at least not a lot. This is what my game looks like. That's crazy. Ecstasy, that is insane. Now for a player like Ecstasy who values movement and just all the fine tunes on what he can do with his controller, I'm sure these settings are absolutely amazing. But the settings that I have, you'll see that, you know, one of the #1 predators, Chaotic Much on controller, he actually used, I'm pretty sure the same thing, 4.3 or 4.4, I believe. And there's a reason for that. With controllers, you get the most out of your aim assist with a low sensitivity and just not a lot of stick drift. That's why pros keep it nice and simple. I'm pretty sure ImperialHal plays with the exact same thing as well. Now, the first tip I want to give you guys when it comes to finding your sensitivity is that even though the sensitivity I have works for me and the sensitivity that XC has works for him, they might not work for you. And that's just the harsh reality of it. You need to play around with your settings and you need to find a sensitivity that works for you. For example, let me turn my sensitivity all the way up. Let me do 8.7. Super fast, right? So whenever I'm shooting these bots now, if you're completely aiming in opposite directions and you can't hit the center of the bot, most likely your sensitivity is way too high. So you just need to turn it down. And vice versa, if you're just moving way too slow and you can't seem to catch up to bots or enemies with your aim, you might want to turn it a little bit up. But it's in variations, right? So you have to do it little by little, and you just have to make sure you find the sweet spot and the perfect spot that works for you, your specific controller, because like I said, a lot of controllers are different, and what you're comfortable with. Second tip that's really going to help you with your controller is practice. Back then, the firing range wasn't really set up properly to where you could practice nonstop, but now it is. If you actually head to your settings and you head to customize range, you can make the bots move. You have them strafe the same way I'm doing. You can change their patterns. You can change, obviously, your level. But the most important thing here is infinite weapon reloads. So you don't have to constantly pick up, ammo and vice versa, just constantly with that whole problem. Now, the best thing about this is that you're not just shooting standstill bots. You're shooting bots that are actually moving and strafing, because let's face it, if you're shooting bots that are staying completely still, you're not going to learn anything, and you're not going to control any type of recoil. That being said, though, everyone has different goals. So maybe your goal is to be better at standing enemies that are standing still, or you know, your goals like mine, and you have trouble shooting people that are just constantly strafing left to right, because you have to remember that you're basing this on, you know, the in-game experiences. So 90% of the time, your enemies are going to be strafing the same way that this bot right here is strafing. No one's going to stand still and wait for you to kill them. That makes no sense. Now, if you want to just really hone in on your aim assist and find the settings that best work for you, then using the bots are the perfect way to go. But if you're just trying to focus completely on aim, here are the two things I really recommend to do. One is never use a barrel stabilizer. I say this because it's hard to control recoil without a barrel stabilizer. So a lot of times in game, you're not going to start off with the barrel stabilizer, so it's going to be even harder for you to control. You don't want to practice with the absolute best situations. You want to practice with the worst, so your best situations become even better. And two, these moving targets, or these targets back here, are going to be your best friends, because your aim assist doesn't really work on them. Your aim assist only really work on the bots. So if you really want to just practice range or just overall your aim altogether without relying on the aim assist and finding out the settings, if the settings you use are really working for you, then these little moving targets are going to be your best friends. And for the last tip, please do not live inside the firing range. One, not only is it just going to be extremely boring for you, but eventually all the bots and all the moving targets are going to become second habit to you. The firing range should be more of a warm-up more than anything else, because you need to be able to translate everything that you're doing in the firing range to an actual game. Now, that's easier said than done, but while combining the firing range with a very fast-paced game mode such as TDM that we now have, it works out perfectly, because you need to be practicing against actual players. A bot can strafe left to right, yes, and it can help your aim 100%. That's the reason why we're warming up with it. But when it comes down to an actual player and actual reactions, the only way to get that is through in-game experience. So this is probably the biggest tip, but honestly, just play the game. Trust me, it's as simple as that. You'll start to pick up on different patterns that people do. You'll start picking up on predictions, and you're going to be beaming kids faster than you know it. Also, on that note, it will not only improve your aim, but it will also improve your movement as well. That's the one thing that's kind of stunted in firing range, is that you're not really practicing your movement too much, as you're more focused on your aim. But you should be strafing, of course, whenever you shoot. So while you're in an actual game, this allows you to be moving, not standing still, because you don't want to obviously die by the enemy, but it lets you practice both in one. So that's why it's very, very important to actually practice in game. Side note, how do you guys actually feel about TDM? I'm not sure if I genuinely enjoy it or if it's just a good like practice round before I hop into ranked. Now, those are just some quick little tips. If you really want me to go in depth and make maybe top 10 tips to really master your controller, let me know in the comments down below. But hopefully this was pretty quick and short and simple, so you guys can pretty much understand. If you have any questions at all, feel free to comment down below, and I appreciate you guys for watching. Thank you so much.